This episode of Chat EDU is sponsored by the National Center for Next Generation Manufacturing. You can learn about all their good work at nextgenmfg.org. So we're about to hear a fantastic interview with Dr. Elizabeth Radday, my co-pilot on the podcast, and Maria Frederick. She's one of the many wonderful educators who are implementing personal interest projects with us here at the Skills 21 team at EdAdvance. Maria and Liz talk PIP and AI, really, really interesting stuff. This is all in anticipation of Liz's forthcoming book. We may have mentioned this book. It is called Learning They'll Love. It will be out on November 26th, ASCD Press, Amazon, Barnes & Nobles. We will 1000% put the link into the show notes. Hope you really enjoy the interview, and Liz and I will be back in the podcast studio next week. Take care.
All right. On today's episode of Chat EDU, I am so excited to have a conversation with Maria Frederick, who is one of our amazing personal interest project teachers. She's actually a library media specialist, and she's going to tell us all of the amazing things she's done with PIP and AI. And we are going to get started. So I'll start by just asking you to tell us a little bit about yourself. What do you do? What's your role like? Tell us.
All right. Thank you. So I am, as you said, a middle school librarian in Reading. And it's been kind of a long journey for me in education. I've been an educator for a little over 30 years. I started out as an elementary school teacher, and then I became a middle school math teacher. And for the last 9 years, I've been a library media specialist. I just kind of consider myself a lifelong learner, somebody who always likes a challenge. I feel like I kind of need a challenge and change, even though, it's a little bit of temporary discomfort. But, that's what allows me to, I feel, continue to be my best working with kids.
I love that you've had so many different positions. It makes you just a more well-rounded teacher. And I love teaching middle school math, so that's awesome. One of my favorite things. So.
Yes, it's definitely been a passion of mine. Definitely most recently, I still love math, but definitely this is a role that I am enjoying very, very much.
So for listeners who might be new to personal interest projects, how would you describe them in your own words?
PIPs are opportunities for students to really dive deep into something that they're passionate about. But I also think there has to be a learning component to it, as well as an opportunity to share what they've learned. So for me, it's really those three pieces of the puzzle that create a personal interest project.
And what kind of inspired you, or how did you get involved in PIP, or what made you want to do it in your class?
So I have to be honest, at our school, it is a required class that all 8th graders have to take. Okay. So in the beginning, when this first came about, it wasn't even that I was investigating into, what a personal interest project was. But my principal came to me and said, so we've added a new class to your schedule. You're now going to be teaching this personal interest project class. And at the beginning, I really had no idea what to expect. But I just, was like, okay, well, I'm going to figure this out. And I have to say that this is my 3rd year, and I have embraced this class, whereas maybe I might have been a little hesitant before. But I've really seen the benefits of it. And now I can say that I love teaching this class, so I do look forward to it now.
That's awesome. Can you tell us a little bit about what that setup looks like? So you said all 8th graders take it. Is it a semester, a quarter, a trimester, every day?
Yes. So
what does it look like?
It's an elective. So my class, it meets every other day. I have 2 groups of 50 students in total. So I meet with my 25 kids on A days, 25 kids on B days. It's a semester-long class. And then I do that all over again for the second semester too. So.
All right. And now, are you the only PIP teacher at your school, or are there others?
No, it is just me. All right. I mean, we'll see. We only have 100 kids in our 8th grade. So if we do wind up having more kids, maybe they'll have to have someone else help out.
All right. Well, that's so fun. And so now that you're on your 3rd year, Can you talk about some of the projects that kids have chosen to pursue through PIP? Like any examples that really stood out?
They have been amazing. I have had kids that have been into like plants and botany and decided to do more of a like scientific experiment where they've like taken tissue culture and they've gone with that. I have lots of kids that get into the arts. A student who recorded her own CD. I've had kids that have learned how to do pottery, crocheting, knitting, cooking. I mean, I had a student who I'll talk about at one point that he rebuilt and created his own go-kart,
Wow.
So it's just amazing, all of the different projects. We've had students that have run little like sports camps for younger kids or story hour at the public library, learned an instrument. I could just go on and on.
So many great examples. And very similar to what we kind of see across is that kids have no limit and there's been no end to every year. I'm sure you get new projects that you're like, oh my gosh, that's a great idea. We haven't had somebody do that yet. And projects that many kids have done, and they're always different.
Mm-hmm.
So now, last year, did you start using some AI with the process?
Believe it or not, we started from year one.
Oh, okay.
Yes. So I had a lot of support from my principal and from our administration. And so right away, when we had started the Skills 21, everyone was on board for having the kids use the AI.
Okay.
So I will say year 3, I feel a little better about how we've been using it. And I've seen a lot of changes, but I was I think maybe it's part of, one of the many hats I wear as a library media specialist, but incorporating the technology and being able to use that with kids for good, for me was something that I was very excited about. And I was really happy to have the opportunity to be able to use it.
Yeah. So just to explain to our listeners, Maria uses our Launchpad platform to do her projects. And so within Launchpad is an AI model that is very guarded. So she's not sending students out to Gemini or ChatGPT or any other large language system or any other wrapper. But it means that the kids are able to use it like a chatbot. So can you talk about some of the examples of when they're using it and what you're seeing?
Yes, absolutely. So, and I'm glad you said that because it's very true. I will say one of the things I do love about the Sidekick is that I get to view all of the kids' conversations from, start to finish. So that was really important, especially the first year, because it was so new. Like when I talked to the kids about AI, they, were actually very hesitant about it. They weren't sure, like, I don't know. This year, like just even 3 years later, it's completely different. The kids are so much more comfortable with using this kind of technology, but that doesn't mean that they don't need a lot of guidance with it too. So that for sure. But they use it, especially at the beginning when they're trying to figure out what kind of project they want to do. The AI, I would say, is absolutely the most helpful with that because they might say, well, I love dogs or I love playing volleyball or, I don't know what I want to do. Just by being able to have a conversation with the chatbot and ask questions and ask for project possibilities based on what their interests are, the kids are you can see the excitement level go up because it really gives them possibilities that I don't think that they would have either come up with on their own or even in conversations with each other. I don't know if they would get the same kinds of suggestions. They also use it for editing when they write their script for their reflection video. They'll use AI to kind of help them, tighten it up a little bit. They use Canva for creating their logos as part of their PIP projects. And there's AI built into Canva, so they use it there as well.
So have you noticed differences in engagement when they use AI or don't use AI? And I guess I'm kind of curious if you think the AI is taking anything away from them being able to use AI.
Well, I think one of the good things is it also has to do with the front loading, so it's I don't just let them go on to the AI without a few days of talking about what is the difference between, say, a search engine and a chatbot, and how do you interact with those two things differently? Because I think the kids will definitely try to use it more to like ask it questions and see if it'll answer their question. And we really work on asking those really specific good questions, as well as it being a back and forth. Something that we notice, is that it'll usually come back. It'll ask you a question. It'll ask you to think about, being more specific. So I think it's been excellent for that. For the one thing I do find a little bit is it does give a lot of the same project ideas. So that would be a little bit of a challenge. I think it's because it's new for every kid.
Right.
It doesn't seem that way. But when I see it with 100 kids, and
Right.
I see what's coming back, I do see that there's a little bit of, regularity of projects
Right.
that seem to pop up when the kids, give a certain topic. So that might be a little bit of a challenge, I would say,
Right.
using the AI.
Right. What kind of skills do you see the kids developing as they're doing PIP and as they're doing AI? Both academic skills and those like real world portrait of a graduate skills we're seeing. So like what is PIP and what is AI doing for them?
PIP in general, I have to say it's probably the first time, at least for our students, that they've done a project that has spanned this long, because our projects are probably 6 to 7 weeks that the kids are really into doing the projects. And so that is, new for them. So I will say that it is helping, it's helping them with time management. And one of the things I notice is that the kids, even though I tell them all the time, about don't procrastinate, don't wait till the last minute. If you follow your own management plan that you've mapped out for yourself, you won't get stressed out about it. But it is amazing how we always get to the very end and the kids are like, oh, you were right, Mrs. Frederick. But it's almost like until they live it, they really don't internalize that. And I think that's going to be a huge skill for them to take as they move forward to high school, to college, even professionally, because I feel like so many jobs now are really project oriented, that if they can have those skills of being able to break down their own project that they've created into meaningful tasks, into bite-sized pieces, if they can stick to a plan, I think that's going to be huge for the kids working on any project in any class. I think the AI has been really good for them because we really want our students to be, good consumers of information. Like they're taking in all this information, but we want them to be responsible. That we want them to question it. That we don't want them to just take it at first look. So that has been, I think, the fact that they have been able to, fact check and be able to not take everything at face value. And I like to say kind of triangulate, can you find that same answer in 2 other places? So, just that being responsible consumers of information, because the AI will lie.
Yes, it will.
It'll make things up, So, so being able to like talk to kids about that and show them examples, or for them to see it on their own, has just been, I think, really helpful for them as a life skill.
Yeah, and I'm thinking about how important that is, like in 8th grade, to do one of those projects where it is over a long time, and to be able to take that into high school, because so many more high school projects, even if it's just, an extra day or two that you have, an assignment on Monday and it's not due till Thursday or Friday, to understand like there's a reason why your teacher doesn't have it due the next day. Like it's a bigger assignment than what you should really be doing in one night. So break it up. But of course, it takes many times to learn those lessons. I think as adults, as an adult, I still sometimes learn that lesson. But to have that experience as young as 8th grade, or, schools that are doing this in 7th, 6th, 5th grade, that's really helpful for them. And then what you said about like triangulating the information, and it's so much better to come from an authentic place, not a like, I'm the teacher and here's a lesson with information that came from AI. Now you go out and verify it. Like they need that information and need to make sure it's right for the project that they chose because they're interested in it. And so when there's all those pieces, they already have the authentic interest. They have an authentic need to know that information. It makes the triangulation seem so much more purposeful than, me giving a lesson in a history class and saying, now sometimes AI will lie to you. And here's an example. Go find, it's a little more, it's still very important, but when it comes from a more authentic place, it just sticks a little better.
Exactly. I mean, it's real time.
Right.
It's happening, in the moment, and they see something and they're able to then, oh, wait, I got to make sure that this is correct. And another piece of it, too, is the presentation aspect of it, because we do have the students present to a panel of community members. They also have that authentic audience. And I think that is also a lifetime skill that they will need to be able to just properly convey their thoughts and be concise and, just their tone, and they're being able to address people that they don't know and explain something that they have been working on for 6 weeks.
Right.
I think it's such a valuable skill.
Yeah, so awesome. What has surprised you most about students in PIP?
Well, this year I have to say I've been most surprised with how many students want to do cooking.
Really?
Cooking is coming back, I feel like. And so that I think I definitely am surprised with. But I think it's just the variety of interests that the kids have. And it's always like surprising and rewarding to me to be able to get to know the kids on a different level. Like it's definitely a level that as a math teacher, I don't know if I would have ever seen that side of a student,
Right.
where I see a very different side of them. They're usually extremely interested in whatever the topic is. Some kids want to just tell you all about it. And it just allows you to also build relationships with kids that I think are special, beyond what at least I was able to do in the classroom.
Yeah, I always think about what we learn about kids when they are doing these projects, and that you may have no idea that this kid outside of school, you kind of know your athletes if they play for the school team, or your musicians because they play in the band, but then you find out a kid plays the harp, and obviously the harp isn't a band instrument, and you're like, you play the harp? You've been playing the harp since 3rd grade? I never knew that. And, these are things that get overlooked because it's not something that comes up in school. My daughter was a synchronized swimmer. That's not a school sport. It's not something that happened in our hometown. She was traveling an hour to participate on a team.
Wow.
And so I always felt like, her teacher, she did it from 5th grade through 9th grade. And I'm like, her teachers don't even know that she's dedicating all this time after school. She looks like she's just going home after school and isn't playing a sport and isn't doing an instrument. And I'm like, but she's putting in a lot of time. And so when you learn these things about what kids are doing in their time off, it's so cool to see all the different things.
Yes, definitely. And, and you're absolutely right, because there are so many sports, like even our swimmers,
Right.
The kids that are so into, like I said, the one student who was into botany and into plants and gardening, I think maybe the science teacher might have had a glimpse of that,
Right.
and I felt fortunate as a librarian because sometimes kids will come in and they'll ask for books about things that they're interested in. And so I get to know about that side of them as well. But for PIP, one student is doing a whole astronomy project
Cool.
this semester. And I don't know if I would have ever known that was something that was a passion for her if it wasn't for PIP.
Yeah. I want to go back to the cooking because as you know, my book is coming out soon.
Mm-hmm.
And one of the things that I try to address in the book, and that is something that comes up a lot, is, so this is a great project for kids to cook, but obviously they're coming to you every other day for 40 minutes and they're not cooking in your classroom. So like, how do you help those kids manage their time because they have to put time in outside of class? Are you selective in who you let do that project? If it's a kid that you're like, I don't know if you're ever going to do this at home. Like, tell me a little bit about managing kids who are doing projects outside of the classroom.
Yeah, I think that's an important part of this as well. And because I would say now the majority of our students are doing projects that are outside of the class. Mm-hmm. So for that reason, I have to really set up very specific sharing time for the kids to really keep them on track. So we also have advisory in our school. So most of the teachers all have a group of about 9 or 10 students that they meet with every other week. So I set up 2 times during the semester for the kids to do a short little presentation on where they're at in their PIP project with their advisory group and their teacher.
Oh, nice.
So it's a chance for them to be able to share what they've done so far. Again, with, very low stakes, it's just a little, I have a short rubric that the advisory teacher will just fill out. But I do require that the kids have pictures for each of those, and that always helps with the reflection video that we have the students do at the end to, have those pictures. And then as part of the class, I go around from table to table. And so I have 2 tables. I'll try to see each class and just have a conversation. Right. What have you done so far? Can you show me anything? I encourage pictures, right. Especially for the cooking. And then the kids do have to have some kind of tangible product that they need to show. So many of them might be working on a cookbook while they're in class. Or I've had students that have created a website for their recipes. They just prefer to do it more digitally than an actual physical book. Okay. But they do need to have those checkpoints so that I can make sure that they're not just cooking 6 dishes the night before. Right. They're going to be presenting.
Yeah, and I think that's a lot of the advice I give in the book is that when kids propose their projects and they say they're going to cook, that part of that proposal needs to outline what they're going to do in class. Because in theory, they could say, well, I'm just doing it at home. I'm just doing it at home. There needs to be a component that they are doing in class. So whether it's working on a cookbook or a website or, doing something about the nutrition of the things that they're cooking or delving into the, calories or the cost and, looking at name brand versus generic. Somehow they need to have something they can work on in the classroom because it's the same. I mean, like you said, it's a lot of kids. They might not be practicing their instrument that they're learning in class. They may not, right. They can't read to kids at the local library during class. So we always needed, you always need to think about if it's a setup like you have where you are seeing the kids every other day, how are they staying busy during class?
Right. And I think at home communication is really important for that too. I love that the kids do the project proposal. I tell them it's kind of like their business plan. And the parents have to sign off on it, that they know that this is what the student has, chosen to do, what their plan is. I also have the students write a SMART goal. So they really have to, I tell them, look, measurable. How are we going to measure this? How are you going to know that you're successful? Where are the numbers? Right. Maybe that's part of being, a previous math teacher. So, especially with the cooking, I'm like, look, this is a long-term project. This isn't something where you're just going to bake a cake and there you go and say your project is finished. We have to do much, much more.
Right.
So a lot of students will research the history behind the recipe.
Okay.
Or, sometimes they'll focus on, I had a girl from Ukraine. She really wanted to feature her Ukrainian dishes. And she went back and found stories from her family or kind of the history behind the recipe that, grandma always would make, at home. So that aspect of it they can work on in class. They get that.
Right.
And then they can work on that in class.
I love that you have parents sign off on that. That is not something I put in my book. And now I'm wishing that I put that, especially for middle schoolers, right? Maybe your high schoolers, you don't want to micromanage as much, but for 5th, 6th, 7th, 8th graders, like it might be a good idea to have mom and dad sign off on it. Like, just so you know, your kid is saying they're going to use your kitchen and like, are you up for this?
Exactly.
So, or like your kid said, grandpa's a car mechanic and is going to help with this. Like, does grandpa know?
Right. And a lot of times for materials, like they'll come up with something. I had one student who was like, oh, I'm going to learn the handpan, and I was like, wow, okay. He's like, yeah, we went to Greece over the summer. I really want to learn how to play this instrument. So I was like, okay. I'm like, do you have one? And he was like, no, I don't have one. And I was like, okay, so like, what did they call? He's like, I don't know. They're like $1,000. And I was like, okay. I'm like, well, I think you might need to go home. I think we need to talk to,
Yeah.
And they worked it out, though. They actually were able to find one that was reasonably priced, that his parents were more than willing to, pay for him to do this project. And he wrote his own song. He learned how to play it, but again, you need that, it's the same thing. Like I've had kids restore, like an old motorcycle that they had in their garage. And, it's right. I need the parent to be able to say, yes, I'm willing to help with this, before, they sign off. So as part of the proposal, it's the aspect where the student signs it, the parents sign it, and then I sign it at the end once I've read through it and parents have okayed it. And then I do send home frequently letters home, or if I feel like there's a student that might not be quite keeping up with their management plan, I'll reach out and say, hey, can you help a little bit at home? Ask them, how their project's going. This is where they should be at. There's 3 weeks left, something like that.
Yeah. What do you hear from parents after PIPs? Now I'm going off script. What do you hear from parents either while kids are doing PIPs or after PIPs? What's their reaction?
I feel like the first year that I had done it, when I had a student who was doing the go-kart, and the parent reached out and was just like, thank you so much. My child comes home and talks about this every evening, at dinner. We're working on this together. I have seen and heard so much about the time that they're spending with a loved one at home, whether it is in the kitchen with grandma, or it's with dad restoring something, or somebody's helping, someone's showing them how to knit or crochet or sew, whatever it might be, or even the relationship with the art teacher as she's teaching them how to do pottery,
Right.
So they're really, like building these relationships. And I think that is just been amazing, and then we do invite the parents to come in when the students share. So when we have our big presentation day and the community members come in, we invite the parents, and I know that they often are like, wow, I didn't know my child could, articulate so gracefully, like what they've done, or so it's really been great.
So I think that is my favorite unintended consequence of doing PIPs. Like, we started this during the pandemic when kids were so isolated, and we intentionally wanted kids to talk to other students or share their projects with their parents. And that was just so that they were talking to someone. And since then, what we have heard from so many families and so many students is the excitement of working with a family member. So on the kids' side, they're saying like, oh, I got to work with my grandpa or my grandma or my aunt or my cousin or my mom or my dad on this thing that they could do. And it was so cool because I always wanted to learn Mima's meatball recipe, or, Nana sews but my mom doesn't. So I wanted to learn from her or whatever. So that part of it. And then so many families and parents would say, like, my kid hasn't talked about school in years, because middle schoolers, if you ask them what's going on in school, they will say nothing. They will say, it's fine, nothing.
Right.
But that parents were saying, like, kids actually had something that they were interested about at school and were excited to tell them. And parents also knew what kids were doing. And you're not going to most likely raise a conversation about, like, so anything new in the American Revolution? Like, America wins. Like, it's not really. And the kids are doing the history. Not to say history isn't interesting, but when they are doing a project and you're like, oh, you just got back from grandma's for the day, what'd you do with her? Or like, tell me about how your cookbook is going or the instrument learning is going, because they know also that the kids are working on these projects. That's really cool.
Yeah, I had, I've had parents that even after the project is over, because it is a semester, and I would have a parent who might stop me and be like, my child is still at home cooking, baking all the time, or, like they're continuing with it. I had one student, a project that really stood out. She had created a sensory garden.
Oh,
So
cool.
I had her first semester, and that's like fall going into winter. So she really spent most of the class time researching the materials and what plants she wanted to have in there. And she did the diagram, and she reached out to, hardware stores to try to get donations of materials. And then even though the class was over in December, like she kept going all the way till the end of the year until it was built at
Wow.
the community center. Like she went, it was built, she put all the plants in, and I remember receiving the email in June, and being like, oh, it's finished, like she stuck with it. This was something that, even though seasonally it didn't fit with what she wanted to do,
Right.
she knew that this was important, and she kept it going all the way throughout. She worked on it the whole year.
And I'm not surprised to hear that you're stopped by parents whose kids continue to do the thing, because if they are really interested in it and they do have the time to dive into it because it's for school, a lot of them do keep going. And we've seen that over and over and over again of kids who are like, actually, that was really fun to volunteer, or I felt so good donating these books to the library, or working at the animal shelter, or making toys for the animal shelter, or now that I know how to sew, I'm making more, or crochet, I'm making more things. And there are certainly instances where it is like a one and done project. They did the thing that they wanted to figure out if they could do, and they did it.
Right.
But then there are so many examples of kids that are not just doing a thing, they're learning a skill that will continue with them, that they get to keep taking. And, the project is done.
Right.
But it certainly keeps going. So
And sometimes it's the opposite, though. I had one student who was really into nails, and she wanted to learn how to do, the fancy nails with the designs and all the little, gems,
Yeah.
So she spent the whole semester doing it. And then she was like, you know what? This is definitely something that I do not want to do like full time. Like this isn't
Yep.
something that like I want to go forward as a career, so she was glad that she did it though. She was like,
Yeah.
I'm really glad I had this opportunity, and I feel like I definitely learned something, but I also learned something about myself knowing that this isn't something that I want to, do for all my family and friends.
Right. Well, we talk about that a lot with juniors and seniors that do capstone projects, which are essentially PIPs on a bigger level. And that it's great when your interest is confirmed and you're like, yes, but it's almost even more valuable to learn what you don't like, especially if it's something you thought you were going to go study, and how great it is to learn that as an 11th or 12th grader before you invest all the money in college. And to realize like, oh, that's actually not the direction I want to go. We worked years ago with a girl whose project was about designing a food truck. And she was, I'm pretty sure she was planning to go off to school to study hotel and restaurant management. And after spending the year asking about trying to figure out the difference between what makes something organic and not, and the prices and the shipping and the carbon footprint and all the pieces that go into designing a food truck, she was like, I don't ever want to have to think about the price of hamburger meat again. And like, she was so glad that she had done this project before she went off to a school to specialize in hotel and restaurant management. And that she did this project now and was like that could have been 2 or 3 years of my life, maybe 4 years of my life before I really figured out like, this actually isn't what I want to do. And so I think that's also so valuable.
I agree.
As a librarian in general, like what role do you think libraries play in guiding students' responsible use for AI? Because that is such a big question. And we've worked with so many library media specialists over the last year or two who have taken our micro-credential, who are the ones at the forefront leading in their schools and who districts are relying on. So what has that been like for you, and what do you think your role should be?
I mean, I think that's a perfect, librarians wear so many different hats, and so we are, already at the forefront of information literacy and digital citizenship, and really using AI responsibly and ethically just kind of really is a natural extension of what librarians already do. So I think we are in a great position to be that person, or people to help kind of lead the way, to collaborate with teachers, to help them think about how to redesign lessons in a different way that might incorporate that. We really want to be resources for our whole school communities, so we have a lot to offer. We want to be part of the conversation when it comes to AI, and, we are there at the forefront to help students use it in a safe way, because that's what I think the students really need, is because, many of them, I think, are using AI and using chatbots, kind of in isolation, or they're doing it at home or without really any guidance. And if schools don't really step in and give them that space and show them, ways that they can use AI as a tool, that's, it's essential, I think, for our kids,
How do you stay at the forefront of leading it? So how do you stay engaged and kind of prepared to lead your teachers? Are there things that you do? Are there things?
Well, there's a lot of, like I said before, I consider myself a lifelong learner. I read a lot. I am part of our state organization for school librarians. So we do a lot of collaboration. We plan a lot of professional development. We reach out to experts, so, that's kind of keeping ourselves a little bit ahead of the game, is really one of our jobs.
Yeah. Yeah, no, that's great. And Matt and I have been able to come to the Castle Conference, which is the Connecticut Association of School Librarians. So, and we love to, bounce ideas off of you and other librarians. And we love when the librarians come to us. So that's always really exciting.
It's a great partnership, and that's what we want to be for parents in our community, for our students, our teachers, admin, every school should have a school librarian.
1,000%. We agree. All right. So here's a big question. We hear a lot about AI is killing students' creativity, or AI is dumbing things down for kids, or they don't have to think critically. So what do you think? What are you seeing? Is it the end? Is it, what do you have to say about how AI is playing a role in education?
Well, AI for sure is not going anywhere. In fact, I can't even believe the difference I've seen in just the 3 years where I think I had said before, our students, when I first was like, hey, we're going to be using AI as part of this class. And the kids were like, oh, I don't know. Isn't that cheating? I heard that like the first year, when I would give them kind of a scale for them to look at, where do you see yourself, in using, do you use it all the time? Do you use it, occasionally? Do you not use it? I mean, most of the kids at that point, even just 3 years ago, were like, no, like, never. I don't use it. This year, 3 years later, they're all like, oh yeah, we go on there all the time, but we're using it more as like, I like to say like an answer machine, so they would go on and they'd ask a question and they'd get an answer from it. But they weren't kind of using it to its fullest potential, like what it can help them with. And kind of seeing that there's a lot of in-between area. It's not that AI, sure, AI can write your entire essay for you, but it doesn't have to, it's not all or nothing. And then I think that was where the kids need the guidance in that in-between spot, So, you could ask AI to help you with an outline, and then you fill it all in with your own ideas, So I think it's really getting the students to see it as a tool and, kind of like a calculator,
Right.
Like a calculator is there to help you and AI can be there to help you. Now, can it do, other things too that would probably put you in the realm of cheating or not doing your own work? Absolutely. But it's a lot of that guidance in getting them to see it in a different way. And if you can get them to see it in a way that is helpful to them, I think there's so much potential that is there. I even know the first time the students would use AI, they were asking it to tell them a joke, or they were like, can you list all the numbers of pi? They were just because it was so new.
Yes.
Now, I think partly because of all the kind of front load teaching that I've been doing with them before I allow them to use the AI, they realize I'm like, this has a purpose. There's a purpose for why we're using AI. And this is to help you with your projects. It's to help you for this, for this, for this. And it has cut down the random questions, the silliness. It is definitely not there. And I think partly because they've kind of gotten it out of their system because they're doing it.
They're doing
it at home.
Right. I mean, there's all these concerns about kids using AI, school AI tools to do nefarious things. And I'm like, they're likely not going to go to their school Sidekick account or their school Gemini account to ask the nefarious things. They're going to do it, but they're going to do it on their own tools. So,
right.
They're using it. I'm wondering, have you seen, and you might not have yet, but I'm going to guess in the next few years, have you seen kids using AI as part of their project? So the AI either analyzing data for them or helping them go further than they could without it yet, or not yet?
Not yet. I have not. I have not seen that yet. I mean, I did have one student who tried to write her own AI chatbot.
Okay.
She wanted to code it, and she realized right away the amount of data that you need to front load it with it. And so she was trying to go with just our school handbook. She was trying, wanted
make
it to
like
be
a handbook chatbot.
Yes, like a handbook chatbot. And she realized that how hard that really was.
Yeah.
And it was a great learning experience, and she did make progress with it. I know she did not get to the end game
where she wanted.
She wanted to. But she learned so much along the way that I think it was very valuable.
That brings up such a good point of why in PIP process is just as important or maybe more important than the product. Because like you've said, you've had some students who maybe do wait till the last week and try to cook 6 items but their items may be delicious, or they wait all semester and they still sew a beautiful blanket in 24 hours. And so like the product ends up great, but you're like, but your process was kind of shortcut. At the same time, you can have a student like that who's just worked so hard and has run into all these roadblocks and understands the challenges. So like her end product may be almost nothing. Like I can't show you a chatbot. I can show you sort of what I started, but what she learned along the way was so valuable.
Mm-hmm. Yep, absolutely.
Hi, I'm Cam Audia, the executive producer of Chat EDU. Okay, if you enjoy Matt and Liz's insights on AI and education, don't miss their next 6-week AI education micro-credential, launching this winter in partnership with Southern Connecticut State University. This self-paced online course for educators and leaders in primary, secondary, and higher education across the globe covers AI essentials from foundational concepts to advanced skills like prompting, AI-driven assessments, and multimedia creation. Each cohort includes 4 live Zoom sessions for hands-on support, and participants earn a Credly digital credential upon completion. To sign up, visit skills21.org/AI/micro. Group discounts are available for schools and districts. We hope you can join us.
All right, so I'm going to hit you with 3 more questions to wrap things up.
All right, I'm ready.
All right, so if you could sum up PIP in your classroom in 1 sentence, what would it be?
I'm actually kind of glad that you asked this because this is, as I tell the students, kind of my overall learning intention for the whole semester. And it's all about explore your passions, learn something new, and create a product you are proud of. For me, it's like that 3-part, almost like a triangle that is, I think, important for them to know that you need all 3 for that stability.
Yes.
It has to be something that they are truly passionate about. There has to be some new learning. You can't just say, well, I'm passionate about video games, So I'm just going to spend all my time, playing video
Super Smash Brothers.
Yeah, like that's that isn't a personal interest project,
Right.
And so, explaining to them, but what are you going to learn that's new? What are you going to improve on something? Are you going to get to another level? Whatever it might be. And then that whole, like that tangible, so what are you coming out with when you get to the end of this?
Yeah.
And again, like we said, sometimes it's something that is completely finished. Sometimes it's not, but that's okay. Are you proud of it? Is this your best work? And you share that out with others. And that's really what it's all about.
That learn something I talk about in my book is the learning stretch. You have to have a learning stretch. So if you are, the video game example is good, but everybody would say like, oh, video games aren't worth it. But like if you're a classical piano player and you're just going to learn another classical piece, like, you can learn that already. That's not really you're not learning something new. Like you're learning a new piece, but it's not really a new skill. But if you are a classical piano player and want to learn a jazz piece, like that's a learning stretch.
Right.
If you love to bake, but now you want to cook, like that's a learning stretch. So having that learning stretch is so important. And then that authentic, I talk a lot about that authentic presentation at the end, right? It's got to have an authentic audience. And so much of schoolwork for kids is just an exchange between the student and the teacher. And so mom doesn't see it, dad doesn't see it, your peers don't see it. You write something down on the paper, it's private between you and the teacher, and nobody sees it besides the two of you. And so the stakes are pretty low. If you bomb a test, like no one's really going to know unless you tell people, where this becomes very public. And so once kids know that they have to present to their peers, already you've gone up a little bit.
Right.
And then their parents are coming in. And then strangers are coming in. So like it just keeps raising that level. And it means that kids take the projects more seriously. They come out as their best selves because they want to be their best selves. No one wants to be embarrassed in front of their peers.
Right.
That step up with that authentic audience is so important.
I couldn't agree more. I mean, we have the first select woman of our town.
Nice.
She comes in, all the time to listen to these kids' projects. We invite Board of Education members to come in and listen. We have administrators. We have people from the high school. Of course, I reach out to the public library, and I'm, fortunate the librarians will come and they'll listen.
Right.
So it's you're absolutely right. It raises it to a level where the kids realize like this is serious. Like sure, I need I'm doing this because I'm interested in it, but there is an end game,
Right.
like there is this presentation piece, and I want to do my best.
Yeah. Do you have the 7th graders come and see too, so that they can get excited for next year?
Sometimes that's something new, actually. We hadn't the first couple years. And then last year we had some of our 8th graders go to the 7th grade classes and kind of present their projects to them in order for them to like get a little excited and over the summer, maybe think about what they might want to do as part of a PIP project, because we also didn't want to overwhelm the kids to have like, oh, you're going to do this presentation in front of, like 30 other students along with, so we keep it actually fairly small where the kids have 10 minutes to present. They have a panel of 2 to 3 adults and then their parents. And then the other 2 students, I usually have 3 students presenting in a half-hour block.
Oh, okay.
So I have it like arranged by half hours, and then it's 3 students, their parents, the panelists, maybe another teacher or someone will come in, to witness, the presentations. But I try to purposely keep it a little manageable, so it's not, for some of these kids, it is overwhelming.
Yeah.
They aren't used.
Real world
they aren't used to this.
Yeah,
this
I mean,
kind of
especially 'cause
presentation.
kids today don't do nearly as much talking out loud and talking to others. So that's great.
Right.
Okay, I want one story about a student and their project that you are always going to remember.
All right, and so that's hard. I think. I know, and I'm probably a couple I've alluded to already. The student who did the go-kart, I think, just was very special for me because I I honestly, I didn't know what to expect. I didn't know what the students were going to come up with for project ideas. And he just was so excited about it. There was no way I would have said no. And then he brought the go-kart to school on the day of the presentation, so that we could see it running. And it was, so that will always stay with me, I think, that as being one of my first year projects. We also had a student once, and this one will stick with me as well. She took on a sewing project. She wanted to learn how to sew. She wanted to make her own clothes. And it had to been like maybe a week, maybe 2 weeks. I don't even think it was 2 weeks before the presentations. I get an email from her mom that's like, she is so unhappy with how they came out. She wanted to rip her project apart.
No.
She wanted to change her whole project. She thought she could do something completely different, and so it was that realization of having to like explain again, it's the process.
Right.
It's okay.
You learned a lot.
You learned so much. Please stick, I'm asking you to stick with it. And mom had said the same thing at home. And in the end, she did. She like found that resilience and she went back to it.
Nice.
And she made some modifications and she came in with the most amazing pair of like pants that she had sewn, like all different fabrics. It was just amazing. And I just feel like that was such a huge learning experience, of pushing through something that you really thought you couldn't do or you needed to change gears because it wasn't perfect enough,
Right.
and being able to be happy with, how much growth you had really made.
Right.
And so I really feel like those pants are going to stick with me.
And pants, as a sewer, pants are the hardest thing to sew because the front and the back are not identical. And so if you make pants with the front and the back identical, they don't work and they're very hard to sew.
Yeah.
And then last question about this is, what do you hope educators listening to this episode will take away about PIP and AI?
Well, I would like anyone who's even thinking about doing a personal interest project to start with some small steps, even if you just start with giving your kids a day to really explore what they're interested in and kind of end it with, do you see any of your ideas turning into a project? Something just to gauge interest and see if, that excitement or see if you see something, a spark in your kids, that might want you to continue with personal interest projects. And even bringing AI into that, it doesn't have to be a big start, but AI, just let them play around with their interests and project ideas and what does AI come up with that maybe they haven't thought of before. Something I hadn't mentioned was the idea of reflection. And I think the reflection is so important also. How did AI help you? Did you learn something new? Did it make you think differently than you hadn't before? Something like that. Or even just throughout the whole process. I feel like I kind of missed an opportunity to talk about that reflection piece.
Yeah. In the book, I talk about how the project is not done at the share. It is not done just because you did your final presentation. You have to go back and reflect. And you can't do that until you've gotten all the way through the project and presented it. So, teachers that are making their timelines, like your presentation should not be the last 3 days of class. They should be the week before. So that the last class or two, you have time to really dig in with the kids, let them reflect on the process, let them reflect on the class, what they learned, changes you can make for the next year. I'm sure you've made lots of changes over the years. So the importance of reflection is just, that's what seals the learning for you.
And even little bits along the way, is helpful too. But definitely at the end, absolutely. And the idea that personal interest projects, now mine happens to be a whole semester, but it doesn't have to be. Kids can do a personal interest project in 2 weeks, as long as you have, obviously, they're working on something they're interested in, not something you're asking them to do. But also, there has to be the end in mind. Like, I feel like the kids have to know at the very beginning, where they're going, where is this ending up? Because that then all the other little pieces can kind of fall into place.
Right.
So as an educator, if you're thinking about doing personal interest projects, think about what your goals are and, start small even. There's nothing wrong with a 2-week personal interest project.
No, not at all. And I mean, pedagogically, we'd say it's backwards design, right? You're starting with the end in mind. You're starting with the goals, and you just kind of work backwards from like the end goal to how much time you have. And, I talk a lot about projects need to be feasible and have an appropriate scope. And so when you're talking about the projects with your kids, over the course of 4 or 5 months, this is how many things I would expect you to cook or bake. If you do a 2-week project, maybe they're only baking 2 things, where over the course of 4 months, you want them to bake something every other week. It's going to be 8 things.
Correct.
You can't fix a whole go-kart in two weeks, right? But you could fix the steering, or you could fix the brakes. On the other hand, if you have a whole year, you should be able to fix a go-kart, or even half a year. Or so, just thinking about what the scope is relative to the timeline, and the same with feasibility. Like you gave a great example of a garden, because I often talk about that as being a hard project if you're a first semester kid, right? Like planting a garden when you're at that point in the project in Connecticut is pretty not feasible. Like November, December, January, not the time you are planting a garden in Connecticut. So how can we modify it? If your school has a greenhouse, great. If you have a place at home where you're going to grow some things, great. Maybe it is that you are just making the plans for the plants, or you're building the garden boxes that will ultimately go in your garden. The same thing with projects where if you're a spring kid, like it's a great project to plant a garden. By the time you're ready to start planting, it's like ideal planting season. But it's the same around sports seasons, right? Like you don't want to plan a hockey tournament if you're the January to June kid, because when you're ready to run the hockey tournament, the pond is not frozen anymore, or the skating rink has turned into the roller rink, or whatever it is. So there are those kinds of things that make it feasible. Budget is another thing you have to consider. All the different like little pieces and how it's all going to go together. But so many great pieces of information and tips from Maria that I just love. Matt and I often talk about the podcast as being our own PIP, that we started out with kind of this idea, the end goal in mind. We're going to produce a podcast, and not, kind of knowing the intermediary steps, but having to ask for lots of help in different ways. And then now that we are 80 episodes in, we're on our 3rd set of mics. We have an actual studio with lights and cameras. Hi, cameras. And we have mugs and notebooks. And, we're flying now, but we're still not done learning, because we're not sure if this is still the right table, or we keep making changes. So, but we felt like it was our PIP together. So have you had a PIP journey in the last 3 years of anything that you've learned?
Well, that's funny, because I was using one as an example for my students. And so over the summer, I had come across this craft that I wanted to do with kids that was making these jellyfish bracelets, And so I was like, I've never really done this before. It's something maybe I might want to learn. But, then I was thinking, well, what would be my goal? What would be the end goal for this? And so I'm also a huge animal lover, and I volunteer at animal shelters. So I was like, maybe my goal is to make these bracelets and then be able to sell them, to friends or family or whatever, and raise money. And my cause would be the animal shelter that I so dearly love, So I've been kind of using that as I go along. As the kids are doing their projects, I'm kind of doing that along with them.
Nice.
So that they can see, oh, see, here's how I would share this, with my advisory group. This is how far I've gotten in my project,
I love that.
And just kind of going along with them so they can see that, I'm kind of on this journey along with them.
Yeah, that's one of the pieces of advice I always give is do your own PIP, whether it's before you start doing it with your students or alongside them, so that they can see you run into the same kind of roadblocks. and decreased motivation sometimes and increased
Right,
motivation when things
right.
get fun. So I just love a pip.
I know.
Well, Maria, I cannot thank you enough for heading out to Litchfield and coming to talk about personal interest projects and my book, Learning They'll Love. Maria was kind enough to get an early version and blurb the book for me. So I'm just so thankful for your partnership. It is so fun to learn more about PIPs from you and for our audience to know all about these projects that are great with AI and don't diminish the project just because you have some AI assistance.
No, I mean, they definitely enhance what the students are already doing. And I think it's perfect because AI can't do the project for you, So it's the perfect opportunity for AI to be used as a helper for what they're already learning and doing.
I love it. Well, thank you so much, Maria.
Thank you.
As always, we'd love to hear what you think. So please let us know at chatedu@edadvance.org. That's EDADVANCE.org. And also rate, review, and subscribe to the podcast on whatever platform you are using. Chat EDU is brought to you by EdAdvance, the nonprofit regional education service center in Litchfield, Connecticut. This episode of Chat EDU is sponsored by the National Center for Next Generation Manufacturing. Chat EDU is recorded, edited, and produced by Andre Angelo and Justin Pasco, whose dedication and expertise bring our discussions to life. Chat EDU's executive producer is the multi-talented rock star Cameron Audia. Additionally, we are grateful for the support of our colleague Gary Robinson, and we appreciate his time and talents. And of course, a big Chat EDU shout out to our fearless leader and executive director, Jonathan Costa, for inspiring the pod. And finally, a heartfelt thank you to our listeners for joining us on this journey exploring the thoughtful and innovative integration of AI in education.
Hello, everyone. My name is Jonathan Costa, and I am the Executive Director at EdAdvance, and I want you to know how much we appreciate our listeners. If you enjoy the podcast, feel free to explore EdAdvance's other AI services, which include customized professional learning of all kinds, conferences, our new middle and high school student AI literacy course, and our educator and leader micro-credential, co-sponsored by the Southern Connecticut State University Office of Workforce and Lifelong Learning. Just visit skills21.org/AI to learn more. That's all for now, and thank you for listening to Chat EDU.